We saw Angel Reese play. We saw Hull play. We saw Enrique. We saw Aliyah Boston. We saw Chelsea Gray.
Did you see what Aliyah Boston just did to Angel Reese? She didn't just win the game, she sent a message to the entire basketball world. Boston's performance was so dominant that it left everyone questioning how Reese could even be compared to players like Caitlin Clark. Now, you might be wondering, what made this game so extraordinary? Well, let me tell you, it wasn't just about the score. It was about Boston proving she's on a completely different level. We're going to break down exactly how she did it, from her unstoppable defense to the unforgettable moment when she put her hand on Reese's face. You won't believe what happened next.
She's a good passer. She's smart. She makes good decisions.
You know the saying, defense wins championships, right? Well, Aliyah Boston just gave us the most jaw-dropping example of why that's true. Picture this, it's the first ever Unrivaled 3v3 game, and all eyes are on Angel Reese, the player everyone's been buzzing about. But the moment Boston steps onto the court, you can feel the shift. It's like she's on a mission to completely shut Reese down. Now, you might be thinking, how intense could it really be? Trust me, what Boston did out there wasn't just defense, it was domination. It was like she could read Reese's every move. Every time Reese tried to make a cut, boom, Boston was already there, blocking her path. Reese would try to post up. But Boston? She'd outmuscle her every single time, pushing her off her spot like it was effortless.
She just goes, and she hit a game-tying shot to send it to overtime. She literally just goes, you know what, I'm scoring every single time on you.
But here's where things get really fascinating. Boston wasn't just relying on her strength, she was playing mind games too. She got right up in Reese's face, making it nearly impossible for her to find any rhythm. You could see the frustration building in Reese's eyes with every possession. It was like watching a chess match, but Boston was always 5 moves ahead. Can you imagine? Reese, who's known for her scoring ability, couldn't even get a clean shot off for most of the game. That's how relentless Boston's defense was. She was everywhere, hands up, perfect body position, never giving an inch. This wasn't just great defense, it was a masterclass.
Aliyah be able to step out, play away from the basket, garden, do some guarding in space. And I had made a tweet, she's going to get even more comfortable doing that. She's going to deepen her bag. We saw All-Star Weekend, bro. Bringing the ball up the court, setting the table so that Cece could get the ball and then get it back to her. And that incredible play does not happen if Aliyah's not comfortable bringing the ball down and operating in space.
And let's talk about those rebounds. Boston was snatching them out of the air like they were hers all along. It didn't matter if it was on the defensive or offensive end. If there was a missed shot, you could bet Boston was coming down with the ball. Her timing was impeccable, her positioning flawless. It was almost like she had a magnetic pull on the basketball. Now, you might be wondering, was it just luck? Did Reese have an off day? Absolutely not. This was all Boston. Her physicality was off the charts. She delivered hard body checks, refusing to let Reese create any separation. It wasn't just strategic, it felt personal. It was like Boston had something to prove, and Reese was her canvas to paint a masterpiece of defensive dominance.
Because she's comfortable from mid. She seemed a little bit hesitant to shoot the long mid.
You might be thinking, okay, Boston dominated on defense, but surely that's where it ends, right? Wrong. There was one moment that elevated this game from intense to absolutely legendary. Can you guess what Boston did that left everyone's jaws on the floor? Picture this, the game is heating up, tensions are through the roof. Boston and Reese are face to face in the paint, the air thick with anticipation. And then, out of nowhere, Boston does something no one saw coming. She doesn't back down. She doesn't flinch. She puts her hand right on Reese's face, can you believe it? In that split second, the entire arena erupted. Fans were losing their minds, players on both sides were in shock, and let me tell you, social media? It absolutely exploded. Everyone and their grandma had an opinion on what just went down. Here's where it gets really interesting. People couldn't decide if Boston had crossed a line or if she had just made the boldest power move in basketball history. Some fans were praising her guts, saying it showed she's a true leader with unshakable confidence. Others questioned whether it was too far, maybe even unsportsmanlike. But let's take a step back. This wasn't some random act. Boston was sending a crystal clear message: I'm not afraid of anyone. It was like she was saying, you've been getting all the attention, Reese? Well, watch this.
Just being physical with her. Coach, in Scout, Coach just talked about how she's relentless on the boards, and we knew that, and so just putting a body on her, making sure that even if we don't get it, as long as she doesn't get it, it's okay. Just because she just crashed the board so well and is just so focused on that.
That moment wasn't just about the game anymore, it became something bigger. It ignited debates across the basketball world. People were talking about player rivalries in women's basketball like never before. Boston's hand on Reese's face? That wasn't just a gesture. It was a symbol of her competitive fire and her refusal to back down from any challenge. You know how Caitlin Clark plays, right? That unstoppable energy, that fire that dominates everyone on the court? Well, get this, Boston brought all that and more to this game. It was like she was channeling Clark's spirit, carrying that same intensity we've come to expect from Iowa's superstar. Every rebound, every block, every score, it was all Clark-level intensity. Boston wasn't just playing a game, she was on a mission to prove something. And prove it, she did. Now, you're probably thinking, but wait, Clark wasn't even there. Exactly. Boston didn't need her there physically. She was embodying that same never-back-down attitude that made Clark famous, and here's where it gets really interesting. You know how the media always pits Angel Reese against Caitlin Clark, making it seem like Reese is on Clark's level? Well, Boston just blew that entire narrative out of the water. Her performance wasn't just about winning a game, it was about setting the record straight.
Boston, her numbers from last year drastically dropped. I think she's averaging 13 and 8, but she's still in the National Player of the Year conversations.
And Aliyah Boston seems like the perfect type of superstar for your college team. Like you were saying before, a player who has the capability to put up 30 and 10, but she can also have really impactful games, scoring 10 and 5, and she's cool with it as long as the W comes out of it.
Boston's dominance on the court felt like she was addressing all those comparisons head-on. She wasn't just playing basketball, she was making a statement. And that statement? Loud and clear, greatness isn't about hype, it's about consistency, rising to the occasion, and delivering when it matters. Most. Can you believe the impact Boston had, even with Clark not being there? It's like she took all the qualities that make Clark stand out, the leadership, the poise, the competitive fire, and cranked them up to 11. Boston stepped up in ways that would have made Clark proud, proving that Clark's legacy and that killer competitive culture are very much alive and thriving. Now, you might be wondering, how did Boston channel Clark's energy when Clark wasn't even in the building? Well, that's the magic of true greatness. It's not about copying someone else's style, it's about embodying the spirit of excellence. Boston didn't just play like Clark, she played like the best version of herself. And as it turns out, that best version shares a lot of the qualities that make Clark so special.
First of all, watching all of these women with people that aren't on their like regular WNBA season teams, just like have a little bit of like grit, a little bit of just, pushing, shoving, a gamesmanship, but also completely 100% vibing with their teams is the most magical thing. I am like obsessed with that aspect of it alone. And I don't know who else caught it, but that little Jewel Lloyd, Skylar Diggins Smith moment where you could tell that like, there was definitely some feeling behind that.
Let's break it down. Boston's performance wasn't just about scoring points or making blocks, it was about setting a new standard. She showed us that the gap between players like Reese and the true elites, like Clark, isn't just about stats. It's about that intangible quality, that fire that burns inside. And Boston? She's got that fire in spades. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the Reese versus Clark debate. For months, we've heard people trying to put Reese on Clark's level. But after this game, can we even make that comparison anymore?
Caitlin Clark set that WNBA record with a 19-assist game, the most assists in WNBA history in a single game. She has now reached 400 points and 200 assists in 26 games. That is the fastest that someone has ever reached those numbers in the WNBA. Sue Bird did it in 33. Caitlin Clark just did it in 26. 6. It is insane when you think about the fact that Caitlin Clark was playing college basketball 3 months ago, and she was already setting these kind of records and has more 20-point games than all of the other rookies combined. The question was, how long would it take for Caitlin Clark to have a dramatic impact in this league? And the answer has been pretty darn fast.
You might be thinking, isn't that a bit harsh? But here's the thing, it's not about being mean, it's about being real. Boston's performance showed us that there are levels to this game, and she just drew a clear line in the sand between good and great. Let's break it down. Boston didn't just outplay Reese, she made her look like she was playing a completely different sport. Can you believe the way Boston controlled the game? It was like watching a master at work. Her composure, her competitive fire, it was off the charts. Now, you might be wondering, but didn't Reese put up some decent numbers? Sure, she did.
And also run off a few three-point shots as well. It'd be great to see how Rose decides to use them.
Reese can stretch the floor.
But here's where it gets really interesting, those numbers? They didn't even matter in the grand scheme of things. Boston's all-around dominance was so overwhelming that Reese's stats just faded into the background. You know how sometimes you watch a game and you can just feel the difference in skill level? This was one of those times. Boston's relentless defense and physicality had Reese struggling to find any space on the court. It was like watching a chess grandmaster play against someone still learning how the pieces move. But here's the kicker, this wasn't just about one game. This was Boston making a statement to the entire basketball world. She wasn't just playing against Reese. She was playing against all the comparisons, all the doubters, all the people who thought Reese was on the same level as Clark.
And we talk viewership. Now let's talk about regular season viewership, not draft viewership. Regular season viewership, it grew by 20% in 2023. It's grown by 180% now, which means it would take another 5 or 6 years to do what Caitlin Clark has done. So between draft day viewership, which is up 400% to 40%, between ticket sales, which is up 93% to 16%, between regular game viewership, which is up 180% to 20%, what Caitlin Clark has done is grown the WNBA exponentially. She did in 5 weeks.
And let me tell you, after this performance, those comparisons are looking pretty shaky. Boston didn't just win a game, she redefined the narratives in women's basketball. She reminded everyone why she's one of the game's premier talents. You see, this game wasn't just about the score. It was about Boston proving who truly belongs at the top of women's basketball. It was about showing that there's a gap between good players and great players, and that gap is wider than some might have thought. Now, let's talk about what this game really means for Aliyah Boston and women's basketball as a whole. This wasn't just another win on the scoreboard. This was Boston completely flipping the script on everyone's expectations. Can you believe how she's got everyone talking now? People are starting to wonder if she's the new face of women's basketball. And let me tell you, this isn't just idle chatter. Boston's performance has sparked serious discussions about where she fits in the big picture of the sport. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what's next for Boston? Well, that's where it gets really interesting. All eyes are on her upcoming games, especially against top players like Reese and Clark. Everyone's trying to predict how she'll shape the future of women's basketball. And trust me, the expectations are sky high.
From the fever on Boston this year, she looks trim, so I think she's working on getting up and down the floor because the fever want to play a fast pace and obviously want to play alongside Caitlin Clark in that way. And I am interested to see how Boston's game is tweaked at all and how you see it in Unrivaled.
So, what do you think? Is Boston now the one to beat? Or was this just one incredible night? Either way, one thing's for sure. She's got us all on the edge of our seats, eagerly waiting to see what she'll do next.